Mr. President, I'm sorry to break in on you like this, but let's be honest. It's the only way I'm gonna get into your office. Now, if you ask around in the military circles, they'll tell you I have a bad habit of jumping the chain of command, especially when life and limb is on the line. So please, sit down at the end of the day, crack a beer, and hear me out. When I'm done, some people are gonna get pissed off. Do I care? Not really. But I always say, when you're speaking the truth and somebody in the area gets upset, somebody's living a lie. That's probably why I retired from the Army as a first sergeant and not a sergeant major, because let's face it, the knee pads didn't fit and I had no desire to put them on, if you know what I mean. My name's Terrence Popp. I retired after 33 years, 3 wars, and I was almost killed in 2 of them. I got all the bells and whistles. I'm a former Green Beret, Airborne Ranger, paratrooper, and infantry soldier. And since 2008, I've been assisting a nonprofit organization called secondclasscitizen.org. In that time, I have talked to between 6,000 and 8,000 servicemen and veterans. And as an inevitable result, I have been tracking soldier and veteran suicide very closely. In fact, I made a whole short video about it, and if you have 6 minutes to spare, links will be in the description.
I don't deserve this.
Now, Mr. President, don't get mad at me, but I'm going to throw your own words back at you.
We're here today to confront a solemn crisis that requires urgent national action. In a few moments, I will sign an executive order addressing one of our nation's most heartbreaking tragedies, veteran suicide. Veteran suicide is a tragedy of staggering proportions. Hard to believe, an average of 20 veterans and service members take their lives every single day. Who would believe that's possible? The task force will create a comprehensive national public health roadmap that brings together federal and local government, along with private sector partners, to improve the quality of life for our veterans and turn the tide on this terrible crisis. Veterans are America's greatest national treasure.
I have reviewed your Executive Order 13822 in regards to veteran and soldier suicide. And I'm just trying to figure out if anything has changed between this executive order and the orders of the past 2 administrations. I'm sorry to say this, Mr. President, but I'm only going to tell you the truth. Your efforts are more of the same. We have been in a state of war for almost 18 years now, and that is the longest state of war we have ever had in the history of this country. Over the past 18 years, it's been the same baloney. We've got the suicide stand-downs, the suicide briefings, and over half a dozen different suicide hotlines. And what has it accomplished? Well, I'm gonna tell you, it hasn't done crap. We've averaged over 6,000 suicides every year, almost like clockwork. And you know what? I don't even believe this number is even accurate. I think it's dramatically underreported. Most who get out of the service are not even tracked as veterans after 4 or 5 years after discharge. There is no formal system in place to track these numbers. Perhaps we need one. In all honesty, Mr. President, if this was your TV show, somebody would be getting fired.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the f*** is that?
Now you gotta ask yourself, Mr. President, what has remained the same over the past 18 years besides the suicide numbers? I'll tell you what's the same, Mr. President. It's those 30-pound brain mother fornicators who've been giving you the same advice that they did for the past 2 administrations. You know, the ones with the impressive rack of fruit salad on their chest? It's not a gay thing, I'm just saying. Well, I'm going to tell you a secret, Mr. President, about these particular individuals, and it's going to piss them off. But half of that fruit salad they got for warming a seat. other 25% of that fruit salad they got from polishing a knob, if you know what I mean. Ordinarily, if you're watching my show on redonkulous.com, I would do some lewd hand gestures about now, but I'm not going to do that because you're the president. I digress. That is neither here nor there or anywhere. I might be retired, but you're still my commander-in-chief, and this one's to you. And the other 20% of that same fruit salad they got for doing mandatory schools or just not getting in trouble. And the remaining 5%, maybe they earned them legitimately. I don't know, I wasn't there, so I'm just saying. But their Leave It to Beaver stats on divorce are flat out wrong. In fact, some of us might go so far as to call it lies. Well, Mr. President, I'm going to tell you the truth, and here's the deal. In 2011, while I was tracking all of these suicides, I would get the write-up or the obituary, copy it, and put it on a Microsoft document. And then I would do a word search for the following 6 terms: divorce, separation, and estrangement, stepson, stepdaughter, and last but not least, former wife. In over 70% of the write-ups on those suicides, I found those words. And what does that mean? The suicide victim had contact with divorce court or family court. Or if he was unfortunate like myself, both. Unlike all of the past presidents, you've actually seen the inside of divorce court. And you know fully well the one-sided bullcrap that takes place in there. If you even walk in there with a swinging P-nice, you lose. Unlike you, most men don't have the money to fight the biased system. And as a result, they lose their children in the process. Mr. President, you're a father, so riddle me this. How would you feel if you only got to see your children 96 hours a month? Even more infuriating, what if that same court told you that that was a privilege? You can ask anyone. You can Google search this till your eyes turn blue. But the loss of a child is the single most painful thing they will ever have to endure. And family court dishes this out 5 days a week, 50 out of 52 weeks a year. Now stack all of this on top of PTSD, alimony, child support, and homelessness. Are we actually surprised that veterans are killing themselves at breakneck speed? Especially when PTSD and wounds received in combat is used as a basis to take your children away. I myself was referred to as a murderer and an assassin in family court. These are servicemen who went to war for this country. They swore an oath to serve and defend the Constitution of these United States. They risked their lives. They lost limbs. They lost life. And some of them forfeited their immortal souls for the defense of this nation. And then they get to sit by powerless in family court as their children are stripped away. And this person who's already sacrificed so much for the defense of this country is turned into an indentured servant by the state. All of their constitutional rights are violated, all under the guise of best interest of the child. And by the way, Mr. President, there's no legal definition of that because I've looked for 10 years. There's a reason why men make up a vast majority of suicides in this country. There's a reason why a majority of the homeless are men, and a large chunk of those are veterans. It's because they love their country, but sure as shit, their country doesn't love them. So if you want some actual on-the-ground soldier thinking to help avoid suicide, I got some options for you. Number 1, make JAG represent the soldier in divorce court and any custody hearings. As it stands right now, by regulation, JAG will not represent a soldier in any civil matters. And because of that, servicemen are getting absolutely creamed in family court. The courts outside Fort Benning, Fort Bragg, and Camp Lejeune are absolutely the worst in the nation at this. They know there'll be no JAG support and that servicemen will be reassigned in 2 to 3 years. Over the past 10 years, I've had about 100 soldiers who've had JAG officers represent their soon-to-be ex-wives in family court. I myself have seen JAG officers handing out cards for civilian attorneys to soon-to-be ex-wives. You want to talk about getting stabbed in the back? That's deep and it hurts like hell. Next, let's talk about toxic leadership within the service. If JAG will not represent that service member in family court, why is it the commander and first sergeant can order said service member to give up vast amounts of property and money to the soon-to-be ex-wife? It is none of the command's business unless the risk of life and limb is present. Servicemen are being barred from re-enlistment after 10 years of good service based on accusations from the soon-to-be ex-wife. Hashtag me too, Mr. President. In fact, they tried to take you down with that many times, right? But in the military, you're guilty until you're proven innocent, right? This combination of toxic leadership, bad deployment, PTSD, and a divorce is a recipe for disaster. And all we're doing is throwing vast amounts of money at the symptoms, but we're not addressing the core problem. The Soldier Sailor Relief Act is a standing joke in family court. Even though it's federal law, it is followed loosely at best. Service members are still being served divorce papers while they're deployed. They're still stripping custody of children from deployed soldiers. If they violate that law, it's on the service member to take the county into federal court. And what do they care? There is no punitive measures built into that law, even if the service member wins. This service member just burned through $100,000 for nothing. How about we build some teeth into that law that removes judges from the bench, gives punitive damages, and disbars lawyers who willfully violate that federal law? And until they give a valid definition for best interest of the child, it should no longer be an excuse to violate that law. In Vietnam, it was almost unheard of for a soldier to do 3 tours of duty. That's 36 months. Did you know in the next 2 years, we're going to have soldiers eligible for retirement who have done between 10 and 13 years deployed to a combat zone? Listen, Mr. President, I don't know about you, but that is unfornicating acceptable. A new model needs to be come up with, especially if it's going to be a long, protracted war. Asking soldiers to deploy for such vast amounts of time is a major contributor to their poor mental health. Furthermore, after a divorce, that service member will ETS from the service within 1 or 2 enlistments. And why? That service member will chase his children wherever the mother takes them, or I should say, steals them to. The cost of finding a replacement, training said replacement, and retaining him is a cost nobody wants to talk about. For the good of the force, this needs to be addressed, period. It's been almost 2 decades. And the suicides have not gone down. None of the programs implemented by the past 2 administrations are working. That's because most of the money is spent to address the symptoms and not actually go after the problem. The loss of love and hope that the service member encounters after a divorce is usually a bridge too far. It's a sad world when the peace of death outweighs the comfort of the living. Mr. President, if you took the time to watch this, I want to thank you, not just for your time and attention, but for you actually addressing this problem in the first place. Now I know I poked a lot of holes in your executive order and you're probably pissed off, but that's what I do. With that being said, Mr. President, please share a beer with me. For the guys from the 101st Airborne Rockasans for the 50th year anniversary of Hamburger Hill in Vietnam. Here's to them. I hope you enjoyed this video and gave you some food for thought, or perhaps it was mildly entertaining. Either way, it doesn't matter. In 2020, I'm still going to vote for you because the Democrats, they went off a rail and they're all socialists. They're insane. And I don't like to deal with insanity. I just like to deal with beer, and this is pretty good.